welcome to our session as part of our state and local government summit, driving digital transformation. Glad that you were able to join this session. This one is specific to data analytics to reduce fraud, and we have two great data scientist contributors today. Going to walk us through a number of subjects. I will show the agenda in a few seconds. But first off, I'd like to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. As you can see on the screen, we have Renee and Andrew, and I'd ask if they would introduce themselves really quickly. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Kramer. I'm a senior data scientist with Catapult Systems. I've got a number of years designing, implementing, and putting machine learning models into production.
And my name is Renee Vellos. I am a data scientist and a business analyst. I have quite a few years as a business analyst, 12, I believe, and 3 years in data science. Excited to be here today.
Thanks very much, guys. So look at the agenda for today. We have 5 items: infrastructure preparation, looking at disparate data sets, data quality, and then, something that we do concern ourselves with, the access and usability of data, particularly personal information. Obviously, that needs to be addressed. And then we said we would look at team makeup, look at what to attack this issue, if you will. What kind of teams makeup do you have, SMEs? What's the process, and where is fraud likely to live?
Sure.
And then we have, to wrap up, we have a solutioning heuristics versus statistics. Interesting subject there. So I'm going to throw it open to our attendees, our participants here, and we can get started. So let's start with infrastructure preparation, and I'll just leave it for you guys to discuss. And off we go. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ed. So before we dive into infrastructure preparation, we have to talk about what the problem is. The problem is fraud. Fraud can manifest in a number of different ways. It can, people can be trying to get money. They can be trying to be somebody who they are not. They can be pretending to be somebody who never existed. They can be trying to leverage systems multiple times. Under false pretenses. This has tremendous, state, government, business impact on a number of different, in a number of different areas. So what we've done in a couple of different situations is build fraud identification solutions in order to find these. And where it always begins is figuring out what are the needs of the infrastructure, like what are we working with in order to succeed. So I guess, Renee, what are some of the things that you've run in trying to tackle this problem that helps a project like this become more successful?
So for us, I think the biggest challenge is accessing all of the data. So many times we'll be in situations where parts of the teams have access to data, then other teams have access to other types of data, and we need both sets. So just the ability, so in cloud, it's a lot easier for everyone to access the same data. But as we know, that many of these companies are not yet using any cloud services, so they're still very separate data sets. So that is, I guess we've moved on to the second point, that moves us on into disparate data sets, where we're trying to figure out what this data is and where it is. A lot of times the clients have to go into research and find out even where it is. So going back to your first point about talking about asking what the problem is, once we identify what the fraud is, we can kind of narrow that down to which systems we'd be looking into and which data we'd be looking into. So
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. When we are working on local machines rather than the cloud, there's definitely the disparate data sets, but I would also say it also causes there to be inconsistency in the development environments as well, which can really slow down, the production of models, of sharing the information, you know, because at all costs you want to, you know, limit time dealing with the plumbing and more on the problem. And then when it comes to the disparate data sets, a lot of the time when you're trying to build the persona of somebody who is having fraudulent behavior, you want to be kind of crossing all sorts of different systems. So making sure that you have access to these different systems, making sure that the business rules are clear. I mean, it doesn't have to be easy, but making sure that you're able to connect with subject matter experts in order to make sure that you can bring in the different sources of data. Um, Another thing about data quality that's pretty fundamental, in my opinion, in a lot of machine learning problems of this style is making sure to have history. Because you need to see how a person moves through a system. And a lot of the time, people will drop data, historical data, in favor of being able to quickly access the most recent information. And I would say that that is like the biggest data quality thing in all sorts of problems, but certainly for fraud. Um, so I think that we could probably go to the next point in terms of access and usability of data. One of the things that I think that we really have to be careful of, especially in the realm of fraud, because a lot of the time you have to identify who these people are, where they come from, where have they been, and all of this information is extraordinarily personal, and like security needs to be extraordinarily high. Again, different cloud servers, make security easy, but even then, you want to try to reduce this information as much as possible. So when dealing with things such as social security numbers, which we don't want getting out, I like it when I'm able to work with an engineering team in order to tokenize the social security numbers. Just giving it just one more step removed from that raw information. But like it is a double-edged sword because sometimes that there's a lot of rich information in this personally identifiable data. Such as a lot of times, address fields are typed in as raw text. And you'll see patterns sometimes of fraudulent users using fake addresses or something like that, or using a PO box, or intentionally misspelling addresses. And in order to find these problems, you do, the data scientist in that case does need to have access to the raw data. But when in doubt, anonymize, and then as you continue to experiment and explore, you can continue to open up some of that data. Do you have any additional thoughts on that, Renee?
Just wanted to comment that we usually identify the critical pieces of information that they're trying to take or
Hmm.
steal. In this case, it's the social security number. So we knew that wouldn't be a field that is changed, right? Because they
Right.
need that social security number to get whatever benefit they needed. So it's just a matter of knowing the data, knowing which ones people have access to or can, and we can also manage those using AD groups and just security on tables can do that as
Hmm.
well. So yeah.
Awesome. So we've been able to talk about, a lot of the building blocks of a lot of different problems, right? In terms of what do you need in infrastructure that's consistent? How do you want the data? Well, you got to figure out a way of marrying all this different information together that potentially wasn't supposed to get together. What do you do with, secure information? But I think that one of the things that leads to the success of a project is figuring out who the right people are that need to be in the room on these conversations. And that would be in talking about what the team makeup is. So the So I guess, Renee, who are the people that you feel need to be in the room with the data scientist in order to make sure that we're trending towards a successful project?
So this can vary. This just depends on which department and which data source we're working with. This could be any of the business teams that help contribute or manage the data that are in the systems that are being compromised. Um, so we are looking for other analysts. We are looking for people with business process information on how information in the system gets updated. We're looking for people who are actually dealing with the fraud. So there might be a fraud or investigation team that's involved. There are a lot of interviews that take place in the first half of this, and mostly just business requirement gathering and a lot of information sessions, knowledge transfer sessions, and that's because we're needing that information to kind of figure out how we're going to attack the problem. So I guess just making sure we have a dedicated team. That's been a really big challenge because not a lot of companies have an entire team to set aside for fraud. And when we get involved, we're asking for dedicated members from a couple of different departments instead of just from one, right? So if there's a fraud team, we don't only want people from the fraud team, as explained.
Yeah.
So that's been a challenge.
I definitely agree with that because you've got to be able to marry all of the different levels of expertise because the business people might get a sense of what some of the problems are either through word of mouth or existing business knowledge. The analysts know the relationship of the data and how it's all positioned. And the people who might be the people who actively deal with the fraud have insights on what is true fraud and what is not fraud and how it fits in their processes, because when we're building a fraud solution, we're not just building a model that is predicting whether it's fraud, but we are building as part of a pipeline that they are working within. And if people get out of sync in terms of what the goals are and what the needs are, it's very likely to end up building something that nobody actually really wants and then ends up not being effective. So making sure to get these people in the room, a lot of the times we'll do daily or multiple times a week stand-ups to make sure that everybody's aligned on what the goals of the project are, and that we are staying most up to date in terms of how what information is going to be most useful in terms of identifying fraud. So I guess then we can probably move towards the I would say like the last part, which is like the solutioning, right? So we've got the people in the room, we've got the data in the way that we want it. How do we actually figure out what an effective solution is? And I think that, and maybe you can either agree or disagree with me on this, Renee, but I feel like a lot of data scientists, they're it's like they've got this machine learning hammer that is always looking for a nail. And they've done all the linear algebra and all that sort of stuff, and they've built this model, and it's 85% accurate, and they've got the numbers to prove it, et cetera, et cetera. But it also took them several months in order to implement the solution. Nobody else can read the code, and nobody has the expertise. And I feel like a lot of the times people get so excited about machine learning instead of just figuring out what are the rules-based solutions to this problem. So, like, what would you agree with that?
Yes, I would definitely agree. A lot of times the answer to the problem is not a model. And I think people struggle with that because their understanding of what data science is a model, right? That's not necessarily so, right? We're looking for patterns. We're doing a lot of different things besides just building models. And especially if we're just building models that take forever and nobody else can read, that's not going to be helpful to anyone.
Exactly.
One
also, oh, go
that
ahead.
you're always saying is listening to the people and codifying their knowledge. I think those are your words. I like
Yeah.
that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because the people often know more than the computer. Like computers are wonderful, wonderful things. The fact that we're on this video conference at all is nothing short of a miracle. But it doesn't really understand nuance, right? So if you're able to codify nuance rather than exclusively relying on statistics, you're going to get a lot of I think a lot of value. And the goal is to really make sure that you are able to marry um, the things that a machine learning model can do, which is find patterns that we can't perhaps see, and codifying things that you know. So if you have 15 different social security numbers associated with the same email, maybe you should do you really need a machine learning solution to flag that? So it's always a balance. um yeah, but I think I think that fraud is always an interesting problem. There's one thing that keeps it interesting and will keep it interesting forever is how do you actually identify fraud, and how do you keep it labeled? And I think that's another reason why I'm a big fan of using heuristics as much as you can in this sort of problem, uh, because there's lots of fraud that you don't catch, and it's difficult for a model to learn that sort of nuance. But yeah, I think that yeah, it's we've done it a number of times. I think that there's always struggles, but like I don't know about you, but the more that we do it, like the easier we're able to find patterns to build out the solution.
Yes, definitely. I've found that it gets easier for me to comb through data.
Hmm.
Each project that I go through, I'm just kind of, learning my own techniques. And I think everybody learns their own techniques when they start to work with large sets of data repeatedly. You learn what
Hmm.
works for you, what doesn't. I do all kinds of sampling. I do all kinds of,
Exactly.
just different stuff to find out things. And that was happening in a few of the projects that I've been on when I'm just kind of combing through data. Then you find something that doesn't look right, right?
Hmm.
It's that ability to just kind of say, oh, this seems wrong. And that's when you bring in your SMEs and
Exactly.
people with that expert knowledge to help you out. Oh,
Absolutely.
I did want to mention that it's important to have an executive champion. We forgot about that to mention that in the SME makeup, but to help us um, escalate for any tools or anything else that we might need, it's important to have that. So we'll want to have someone with a vision
Hmm.
for the fraud who can drive the entire project and who can keep everybody in communication and on the right track. So we will need one of
Absolutely.
those.
And a good executive is not going to be too into the details. Executive sponsor is not going to be too into the details. And I found that a lot of the times they're making sure that everything is running, but because they don't see everything all of the time, uh, they are able to infuse a lot of creativity. Because when you're on the ground, for a project that takes months, and you're on, the stand up every single day, where's that creativity coming from?
Mhm.
Building in an outsider who cares, I think is a huge driver for creative solutioning. So yeah, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting problem. It's definitely never a dull moment with fraud. All
Great.
right.
Well, thanks very much, guys. That was a really great session. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. Um, I wanted to thank everybody who's been through this session with us. Hopefully, it was useful. Uh, my name is Ed Blake. I'm the facilitator for all these sessions. So just wanted to let you know that. Again, I hope it was helpful. If you guys do want more information, if you would if you'd like to talk to one of our experts, they're certainly available. If you'd like to do that, there's one QR code here. that you can access. And then we'd like to know if you found today valuable, if you have any thoughts, any suggestions. It's a quick survey for you to sort of let us know how it went, if it was useful, if you'd like to see other things in these sessions. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. Again, thanks to Renee and Andrew for their time. And really, again, hope it was useful for you and hope to hear from you to expand on what we heard today. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks.